My name is Chief Petty Officer Marcus Drell, and I'm going to tell you about the night I died, and the choice I made before I came back. Before we go any further, if this story hits you somewhere deep, somewhere you didn't expect, hit that subscribe button. Drop your location and local time in the comments. I want to know where in the world you're sitting right now. Because what I'm about to tell you happened in a place most of the world has never heard of. In the dark, in the cold, with no one coming to save us. And the only reason I'm alive to tell it is because one man decided that his life was worth less than the mission. I disagreed with him. I still do. And that disagreement is the reason I wake up every morning and lace my boots. Now let me take you back. November. The Hindu Kush mountain range, northeastern Afghanistan. Elevation 9,000 feet. Temperature 14 degrees Fahrenheit and falling. I was 29 years old, and I was the senior enlisted man on a 6-man Navy SEAL element designated Task Unit Bravo, and we had been inserted by helicopter 4 hours earlier into a black zone, meaning no communications, no close air support on standby, and no acknowledgement from the chain of command that we were ever there. That last part is important. Remember it. The mission was simple on paper. Locate and confirm the position of a high-value target, a former Pakistani intelligence operative named Khalid Raza, who had gone rogue 3 years earlier and was now brokering weapons transfers between a network that stretched from Kandahar to Karachi. We were not authorized to capture or kill. We were eyes only. Get in, confirm, get out, and let the analysts do the rest. Simple, clean, quiet. Except nothing in that mountain range is ever simple, clean, or quiet. And the intelligence that put us in Sector 7 that night was wrong in exactly the way that gets men killed. Our team leader was Lieutenant Daniel Voigt, call sign Reaper, a man who had been running SEAL operations for 11 years, and who had the kind of calm in his voice that made you believe, genuinely believe, that everything was going to be fine, even when every piece of evidence around you was screaming otherwise. Our communications specialist was Petty Officer 2nd Class Anthony Reyes, 24 years old, from El Paso, Texas, who had a photograph of his daughter taped inside his helmet. She was 4 years old in the photo, missing her 2 front teeth, grinning like she'd just won something. Our breacher was Petty Officer 1st Class James Okafor, built like a linebacker, quiet as a ghost, the kind of man who could strip and reassemble a door charge in complete darkness by feel alone. And then there was our medic, Petty Officer 2nd Class Connor Walsh, 26, from a small town in rural Montana, who had joined the Navy because his father told him he didn't have what it took, and who had been proving that wrong every single day for 6 years. That was our team. 6 men, 9,000 feet up, moving through a mountain pass in single file, weapons hot, nods down. Reyes touched my shoulder and held up a closed fist. Everyone stopped. Everyone froze. And through my night vision monocular, I counted them. 14. 14 armed men positioned in a semicircle across the ridge above us, and they were not moving randomly. They were set. They were waiting. Someone had known we were coming. The ambush was already closed before we realized we'd walked into it. Voigt's voice was a breath in my earpiece. Marcus, I already had the count. I know. Then the first muzzle flash split the dark, and the mountain woke up screaming. The next 4 minutes were the kind of 4 minutes that take 40 years off a man's life. We moved fast, low, returning fire and pushing for the eastern edge of the ridgeline, where the terrain gave us a natural defilade. Okafor took a round through his left shoulder at the 30-second mark. Clean through, no artery, but he was bleeding, and he was going to keep bleeding, and we all knew it. Connor got to him in the middle of a firefight, bandaging a wound with one hand and returning fire with the other, and I will never in my life see anything braver than what I saw Connor Walsh do on that ridge. We made the defilade. We went to ground. The shooting stopped, which was worse, because silence in the mountains after a firefight means one of two things. Either they've broken contact or they're repositioning. And 14 men don't break contact when they have the high ground. Voigt ran the numbers out loud, the way he always did, calm and methodical, like he was solving a math problem and not a death problem. We have 1 wounded, 1 compromised radio. Reyes had taken shrapnel to the SATCOM unit, cutting our long-range communications. And we are 4 kilometers from our extraction point, with 14 hostiles repositioning to cut us off. There was one route out, a narrow couloir on the northeast face that dropped 800 feet into a valley where our extraction bird could conceivably reach us if we could get comms back up, and if the weather held, and if we moved in the next 15 minutes before the ambush element flanked our position. 3 big ifs stacked on top of each other like a house of cards in a hurricane. Then Reyes spoke. There's a way to get comms back up. He was looking at the secondary antenna pack in his kit. To get a signal out from this terrain, someone had to move to the exposed lip of the ridge, a position with absolutely no cover, hold the antenna up for a minimum of 60 seconds, and transmit. In the dark, with 14 armed men repositioning somewhere above and below us. 60 seconds exposed on an open ridgeline. Voigt looked at Reyes. Reyes looked at Voigt. I already knew what they were both thinking, because I was thinking it too. Reyes said, I'll do it. I'll go up, hold the antenna, get the transmission out, and then I'll follow you down the couloir. His voice was completely steady. I want you to understand that. 24 years old, daughter with no front teeth taped inside his helmet, and his voice was completely steady. Voigt was quiet for exactly 3 seconds. Then he said, Go. And something in me broke open. Not out of fear, out of disagreement. Because I had 11 more years than Reyes. Because if someone had to be exposed on that ridgeline for 60 seconds, while 14 men hunted us, it should be the man whose death would cost the least. The man with the least future ahead of him. Me. I pulled Reyes back by his kit carrier before he could stand. I said, Give me the antenna. He looked at me. Voigt looked at me. I said it again, quieter this time. Give me the antenna, Anthony. He handed it over. I don't know why. Maybe he saw something in my face. Maybe he was 24, and some part of him that he'd never admit to was relieved. I took the antenna pack, moved to the couloir edge, waited for a count of 5 for any muzzle flash that would tell me they'd spotted our position, heard nothing, and went up over the lip onto the exposed ridge. The cold hit me like a wall. The wind was 12, maybe 15 knots from the northwest, carrying snow, and I could see nothing above me in the green wash of my nods except rock and shadow. I set the antenna, pressed transmit, and held the position. 1, 2, 3. I was counting in my head, watching the ridgeline above me, watching for movement, watching for the shape of a man against the sky. At 22 seconds, I saw them. 2 figures moving along the high ridge, maybe 200 meters above, coming down at an angle that would put them directly above my position in less than a minute. 30. 31. I did not move. I held the antenna and I kept transmitting, because if I didn't hold for the full 60 seconds, the signal would not be strong enough to bounce off the satellite at this altitude, and without that signal, we were all dead anyway. So the calculus was simple, even if it was ugly. 47. 48. The first shot hit the rock 12 inches from my right boot and sent shrapnel across my shin, and I still did not move. 55. 56. 57. At 58 seconds, Reyes's voice came through the short range. Signal confirmed. They have us. Get off the ridge, Marcus. Get off the ridge. I dropped back into the couloir on 59. I don't know if the 60th second mattered. I just know I stayed until I thought it did. We moved down the couloir in the dark, Okafor between Walsh and me, Voigt on point, Reyes covering our 6, and we moved fast, and we moved without speaking, because there was nothing to say. At the bottom, in the valley, in the dark, we waited. 17 minutes. That is how long it took for the extraction helicopter to reach us from its holding position 40 kilometers to the west. 17 minutes in a valley at 8,000 feet, with a man bleeding through a field dressing and 14 armed men somewhere above us in the mountain. The helicopter came in low and fast with no lights, and when we loaded Okafor on board and the door gunner pulled us up and the mountain fell away beneath us, I sat on the floor of that helicopter and I felt something I hadn't felt in 11 years of doing this job. I felt the size of it. Not the danger, not the mission. The size of one life, how much it weighs, how little we think about that weight until we're holding 60 seconds of someone else's future in our hands and deciding whether to put it down. Reyes never said thank you. That's not how we work. But 6 months later, when his daughter turned 5, he sent me a photograph. She'd grown her front teeth back in. She was grinning the same grin, and on the back, in Reyes's handwriting, it said, "She asked me who my best friend was. I told her your name." I keep that photograph in my wallet, not because I need to remember what I did on that ridge, because I need to remember why I did it. We talk a lot in this country about what it means to serve. We talk about sacrifice in the abstract, in speeches, in ceremonies, in the comfortable language of people who have never had to make a decision in 59 seconds, with a mountain full of armed men above them, and a 24-year-old's entire future in their hands. I'm not telling you I'm a hero. I'm telling you I'm a man who made one decision that I'm not ashamed of in a career full of decisions I've had to sit with for a very long time. Some of those decisions were right. Some were wrong. Some I'll never know. But that one, the antenna, the ridge, the 59 seconds, that one I know. I'd make it again tomorrow. I'd make it every time. That's what this job does to you if you let it. It strips away everything that isn't essential. It takes the noise and the politics and the grievances and the pride, and it burns all of it away until what's left is simple and clear. The man next to you is worth more than your comfort, your safety, and sometimes, just sometimes, your life. I'm Marcus Drell. I'm 41 years old. I live in Coronado, California. I coach youth wrestling on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. I make coffee too strong, and I sleep with the window open because I spent too many years sleeping in places where the air didn't move. And every morning when I lace my boots, I think about a 24-year-old from El Paso with a photograph inside his helmet, and I lace them tighter. For him, for all of them. If this story stayed with you, drop a comment. Tell me what you would have done with that antenna. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time, because every story we tell on this channel exists for one reason: to make sure these men are never forgotten. See you next time.